Good morning, white people. This is part 3 of Things I Learned by Listening to Black Women, the series where you don't listen to black women, so a straight white man repeats what they say, and maybe you'll listen to that. There have been a lot of videos of white women asking, what can I do to help? What can I do to show black people that I'm safe to be around? The overwhelming majority of black women have answered this question by saying, talk amongst yourselves. Have the difficult conversations with your mothers, your aunts, your sisters, your friends, and most importantly, yourself. Dismantle your own internal biases. Don't try to appear safe. Be safe. Be compassionate, be empathetic, and don't think you deserve a reward for doing so. Your intent will come through without you having to say anything if it's sincere. Another big one was defend black women at work, meaning if you notice that someone else is dismissive of what someone is saying because they're black, stop it. Call it out. If a black person has an idea that gets dismissed by a white person who then suddenly puts that idea forth 10 minutes later, call that out. Make it visible. Make it uncomfortable. Many black women talk about being scared of white women even more than they are afraid of white men. They point out how hypocritical it is that the same white women who said they'd choose the bear over the man are calling black women crazy for feeling safer around white men than white women. If you feel the need to point out not all blank, doesn't matter what it is, then you are the person that people have to worry about. Tune in next time when we'll cover why you don't need AAVE when you've got expressions like, I've had it up to here, and you're cruising for a bruisin'. That's all for now. Please share with other white people. Side note, I have a lot of new black women followers. Thank you so much for watching me stumble through this. I hope it goes without saying that if you have any specific topics that you'd like me to listen for and share with other white people, please let me know. And if you're feeling especially generous, feel free to correct me if I get things wrong. Again, thank you so much.
Every 5 seconds, I'm seeing a video of a minority group saying we're the black people. We're at home. We're relaxing. We're chilling. We're hanging back. You're talking about come together. Why? We tried to do that. We've been trying to do that forever. All right? You can't sit up here and be mad at us for wanting to not roll with y'all right now. It's just what it is. It's like, let's say we was on a farm and black people plowed the field, planted the seed, watched it grow. In the midst of its development, there's food to be eaten off of it. Y'all come in and have no food. Y'all see ours. We share. But you see the white people field over there, and you thought that it tasted better whenever you got a little crumb of it. And so you thought, when the white people said, let's burn down their field, you thought that you was going to eat off their field. And now that you voted for that ass, voted to destroy our field, and you're watching it burn, you go over there with your bowls. Hey, can I get some food? And they go, fuck off. And now you're looking at us and you're running to the water and you're trying to get buckets and trying to pour it out onto the field because you realized that you was eating from that field. That was your main source. You fucked yourselves and tried to fuck us in the process. I mean, you literally thought that you was going to throw us to the side and get accepted by this, when we had already accepted and gave you a plate. And now, the field is burning, and you want us to run outside and get a bucket with you and pour it the fuck out? And put the fire out? No. How about this? Y'all put the fucking fire out. And y'all replant that bitch. And y'all show us y'all ready to do some work. Stop complaining. Stop looking at us. We did the work. We was here. You benefited off of our labor. You benefited after our protests, our demonstrations. Everything was geared to helping not just us, but your ass too. And I'm also talking to the white women, because you part of that minority group too. So, look, you can miss us with the, where is the black people at? We right here, just watching. We standing back and watching and seeing what the fuck you do.
2020 was a wild year. White people kneeling and begging for forgiveness from black people. This is not what we asked for. I am confused as to when this happened and why the lady in the braids cried so much, like it truly touched her heart. She thought racism was actually ending because, yeah, newsflash, buddy. I don't even know how to articulate. Oh my God. This isn't a part of the thread, but it also just kind of, reminds me of that same running theme of just what you shouldn't do. I have 4B to 4C hair type. From my African ancestors on both my paternal and maternal genetics, so I care for it in a traditional way to maintain my afro and curls.
I guess they say black fatigue is when white people or any group of people start to get tired of black people's BS. Do I think black fatigue is real? No, but fatigue is. And I know some of you get uncomfortable hearing the N-word, so for this video, I'm going to replace the N-word with puppy. To all the puppies out there, people are getting fed up with your puppy antics. Puppy fatigue is your own fault. And black people, if you get mad at me for saying this, then I guess you consider yourself puppies too. Because I'm not talking about black people, I'm talking about puppies. And let's keep it real, black folk. We getting tired of puppies too. That's why when black people become successful, the first thing they do is move far away from puppies. Because puppies are loud, aggressive, violent, annoying. They destroy people's properties, and the young puppies are the worst ones. This is why nobody wants to be on planes or cruise ships with puppies. Nobody wants to be confined in one place for hours with a bunch of wild puppies. But watch, once people start putting...
I said before that a lot of white people only care about racism and cultural appropriation when it concerns black people and literally no other race.
They turned off their stitches, duets, and the ability to save the video. So if you want to go watch the video in its entirety, I'll link it below. The way that she framed her argument was purposeful and insidious. Because this conversation has to deal with white people and their ability to cultural appropriate to the point that the culture that they are appropriating becomes so watered down that you can't recognize where it came from before, such as what they did with yoga, like you were talking about. But instead of talking about that issue and directing that animosity, that clear animosity that I so feel at white people, you bring black folks into this conversation. And if we are being honest, because I see through the bullshit that you're doing, you're talking about black Americans. You are inviting anti-blackness into the comments, and specifically anti-blackness against black Americans, because you know that that is the most socially acceptable form of anti-blackness. Because what do black people have to do with this conversation? Black Americans are the loudest about protecting and gatekeeping their culture. If you have an issue, you should say it. That white girl was aware that you doing box braids was an issue because black folks here told her. Yeah. And in the same way that you all expect Americans to be aware of the intricacies of your societies, you all should be that aware of the intricacies of ours as well, and the histories. Because if you were educated, you would understand the rich and deep history that black Americans have with their hair. You would understand that to this day, Black Americans are actively discriminated against based off of that they are treated differently based off of what type of hairstyle that they are wearing. You would then understand that if you are under attack based off of something that is part of your cultural identity, and then these people come in, take that aspect, and are somehow praised and somehow rewarded, and meanwhile you're getting fired from jobs, kicked out of schools, yeah, you would be upset. There is obviously some underlying animosity towards Black Americans in your hearts, and I want you to go and seek help, because this video was unnecessary. You could have talked about that white girl by herself. You did not have to bring up Black folks into this.
White people, answer this question for me. I need to know if this is a rumor or do y'all really think this way? And it's something that I've heard before, but at the time I really didn't think much of it, but now I figured I just ask. So my question is, white people, do a lot of y'all really think all Black people look alike? I just want to know.
Speaking specifically to new white allies in the fight against racism and systems of oppression, you are going to feel burnt out and you're going to feel very frustrated and tired. And that is completely natural and normal. My advice to you is that you need to find other like-minded white people who have moved further along in their journey in this topic of race as it relates to what's happening in America. Because when you want to speak to non-white people, specifically Black people, for advice, yes, we understand it the best, but your words and your questions and your emotional baggage can end up being very triggering to us. So it's very emotionally draining. And what helps is that being in a group of all white people who have gotten the answer that you were looking for is you were able to express yourself and say whatever you want and not end up triggering something in another person, because they also understand where you're coming from. Also, you can look and read this for advice as well. You can pause it to screenshot.
One thing I found truly mind-boggling was until I got to college, I did not know that Black people are only about 12% of the U.S. population. And because I grew up in Mississippi and Tennessee, and the percentage is much higher, but then when I got to college, I was like, there are so many people who have never been around Black people before, and you can very easily spot them just simply by their reaction to when a Black woman gets her hair done. I was at kickball the other day, and my friend, she came in and it was her birthday, she got her hair done, it looked great. And then my other friend looked at me and he was like, oh my God, I never realized her hair was that long. Don't piss me off. This was like week 7. Where the fuck do you think she hid that hair the first 6 weeks of kickball? Genuinely. You talk to this woman. Don't piss me off.
Dear white people, if my video lands on your For You page and you ain't got a problem with Black people, can we be friends? That's all I want to know. And that is all I'm trying to find out. We must talk about this. We have to talk about the status of the farmers. Yep, the farmers. That overwhelmingly, the white farmers that overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Now, the farmers are asking for welfare from the government because a lot of them are losing their farms because the subsidies that they get from the government, they can't afford the farms without the subsidies in many cases. And they're like, look, we need help. But here's the difference. When the Black farmers asked for help, the white farmers filed a lawsuit. They filed a lawsuit against the Black farmers for asking for assistance from the federal government. And they weren't able to receive the assistance from the government because of the white farmers filing the lawsuit. Question is, do you think white farmers, should receive the help, the same help that the Black farmers had asked for, and they filed a lawsuit? Should the Black farmers do the same thing and file a lawsuit? Get in the comments. Let me know.
If I make a Black People Meet account right now, what's going to happen? Are they going to kick me off, or are they...
If you guys want to be a part of Black Spaces, just say that. Literally nothing will happen to you. Even if we didn't want you on the app, we can't do anything about it. I'm going to show you the Black app so you can see what I mean. First one already, I didn't have to swipe. This one was 3 swipes later. I don't even have to try this hard, bro. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Am I going to find Black women on this bitch? I wonder. This is her bio. Fetishization to its finest. And she got fucking braids, bro. Surprisingly, there's a handful of Latinas on here. Like, I never would have guessed Latinas would want a Black man in Denver out of all places. And it keeps going, bro. I already got 3 likes. And by the way, it was all white chicks. Now this is what I want to see. Not this shit. This. Oh my God, her skin is gorgeous, bro. Look at her skin. Holy fucking shit. Get the fuck off the app. Dude. Imagine if I brought a woman like this home to my family.
I am so sick and tired of this chip that you're carrying on your shoulder. We have bent over backwards. We have done backflips to make you feel equal. And yet, we've done everything. Perfect example is in the federal government. If you and I get the exact same rating for a position, do you know what? You get it. And do you know why? Because you're Black. Is that fair? Is that fair to me?
There is a woeful lack of understanding, not only in the Black community, but really in the white community, of why Black people are in the condition that we're in, and why all of the efforts that whites have made and government has made to try to solve the problem in the way that government sees fit has not really worked. And Blacks are still crying out for more and more and more. And I realize that this is an irritant to white people because you really don't understand. And it's not really your fault. It's not really your fault. You just don't understand. But I think if you gave yourself a chance to hear what happened to these Black people that makes them as they are as an irritant to you and those who think you have done the best you could. And maybe you have, but I respectfully suggest to you that there's so much more that could be done, that should be done, and that must be done if America is to survive.
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are Black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well. right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war. Right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Oh, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I got to charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens when you go out on strike? Who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer.
White folks with very little power. For them, it's just habit. I have been speaking more vocally on race and sort of documenting my deconstruction of the racism I was indoctrinated into as a child. And when I make those videos, there are 3 different kinds of comments I get, excluding the racist assholes because I just delete and block them. But from white folks, I generally get, oh my God, I never even thought about it like that. And from black folks, I usually either get, thank you for speaking out, or how can you not know this? Why are you shocked? We've been saying this forever. And that third response is 100% valid and I completely respect it. You're right. I should know it. We all should know it. But it's that first response is the reason why I'm documenting this process I'm going through. Have been going through for years, but it's accelerating pretty quickly right now. Because us white folks are stuck in this loop of we don't know what we don't know. We were literally taught lies. So I'm just going to keep speaking truth.